It is Vintage Super League time once again. I'm Randy Bueller. I'm joined by Rich Shea. How you doing, Rich?
Hey, Randy. How are you doing?
I'm
See,
good.
you're getting ready for the WBC.
There we go. World Board Gaming Championships. I leave on Friday. Super psyched about it.
It's a Shark Tank, and my dad's going, and I'm probably not going this year. I think there's been, I know there's a work trip that got scheduled then, and then it might not happen, but I don't know if it's happening. So I'm confused, but I even made sure I had a week of vacation time saved up, but I'm probably, but not 100% not going.
Well, I'll root for getting to see you anyway. Yeah, World Board Gaming Championships is all of next week. It worked out to be just exactly the week before Pro Tour Sydney, actually, for my schedule, which means as I fly from Pittsburgh home to Seattle, I'm in Seattle for a good 17 hours before I then get on my flight to Pro Tour Sydney. It's like
that's awesome.
It should be fun. So, I land like Sunday at midnight and then leave for the Pro Tour Monday early evening.
It's worth pointing out that World Board Gaming Championship is not a relaxing affair. It's not casually sitting around playing board games.
It depends how you play this show.
Okay.
There is a giant sort of open board gaming room that lots of people enjoy. Lots of people who are not me. Like
the way Randy does this.
Spike, the way I do this,
yes.
I min-max the schedule and get into like 25 different tournaments. And if you're following me on Twitter, beware. The annual avalanche of board game tournament related tweets will be starting on Saturday. I don't know. People say they like it, so I'll keep doing it. I have fun.
Oh, yeah. At least I can be there in spirit. Randy is a complete shark at this. Randy is always doing well at this, and Randy's really good at board games. So I've
been winning my fair share. It's fun. Definitely.
Too.
But we're here for Magic. We should talk about Magic. We have to talk about the big news. There's no news whatsoever. No changes to the BNR list on Monday, which is exactly what I was expecting. Also, for what it's worth, what I thought was exactly correct. I haven't actually heard your take on it, though. What did you think?
It's what I was expecting, but I don't think it was correct.
Okay.
I think Gush has to go, and I've been saying this for a while. I think a lot of the other problems that appear in Vintage are actually the result of Gush. So all those workshop restrictions, I think they happen because of Gush. You can make...
What?
Hear me out.
All right, go.
You can make a big blue deck that will beat workshops. You can make Control Slaver or one of the other giant blue monster decks that will actually take out workshops fine because they'll make their first 34 land drops, and then, they'll eventually do something really bad to the workshop deck. But you can't make a big blue deck without losing horribly to Gush. We have 70% Gush in our metagame, and the reason
our metagame Vintage Super League this trimester, there are 7 Gush decks. Okay.
Exactly. And the reason I can't play Control Slaver, as much as I'd love to, is that Control Slaver, well, it's really bad against Gush. And all the other big blue decks are bad against Gush. And you might think a deck with, say, Notion Thief, like Grixis Thieves, would be good against Gush. Not so much.
And yeah, I know. I feel like I'm supposed to channel my inner Kai in that Gush is a card that it's not good on turn 1, it's not good on turn 2, and you don't really want multiples of them in the first 3 turns of the game. Like, how can you say we need to restrict this card? I mean, I do understand your argument, but at the same time, you're taking a very sort of prescriptive take on BNR management there. It's like, I'm not convinced the card's broken. I'm not even convinced it's better than Gitaxian Probe or Preordain in the like cheap blue cantrip decks. It gives it a late game inevitability, I think, is your point, and I'll grant you that, but it seems so weird to me that you want to restrict a card that's not even good in your opening hand in Vintage.
If you want to unrestrict cards that are bad in your opening hand, not good on turn 1, and you don't want multiples of them, let's just unban Yawgmoth's Will.
I'll play Yawgmoth's Will on turn 1 all the time if I get 4 of them and can build around it. But touche. I mean, look, I am not been. I agree that the blue cantrip decks are there. Look, there's 7 of them in VSL. I think it's completely correct that there were no changes to the BNR list this time around because Vintage has been in flux, right? The Eldrazi had a month where they crushed, right? They were crushing the Power 9 tournaments 1 month. Okay, Gush crushed 1 month. It's like we had a month where Storm crushed a while ago. I don't think that Wizards should be fiddling with Vintage constantly. I think Wizards is only supposed to fiddle with Vintage when things have kind of evolved into sort of a stagnant stalemate situation, or maybe a metagame rotation that has a relatively small number of decks in it. And we weren't there. Like maybe they do eventually need to do something about the grow decks. I wish you call them Gush decks. I'm not convinced Gush is the key card.
They're really Turbo Xerox decks.
Yes, 100% yes. They're Turbo Xerox decks. Thank you, Alan Comer, for unleashing this on the world 20 years ago or whenever it was. Yes, they're cheap blue cantrip decks, right? You just get this awesome deck velocity and you have all these cantrips and they kind of do a little something and you don't have to put many lands in your deck because you have all these cantrips to draw lands. Maybe they're too good. I think that it would take another couple months before we could even come to that conclusion. I don't know that I would want WotC to shake things up. Like, I think their next announcement is right before Eternal Weekend. So it's like probably you wait until after Eternal Weekend to do anything if you're WotC, like, putting on my DCI hat or whatever.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I make any changes right before Eternal Weekend. That's probably not a great idea.
Okay. You want them to be aggressive, and you think the blue cantrip decks are clearly too good.
I think hitting Gush is no more aggressive than hitting Lodestone Golem was. And I think that the blue cantrip decks choke out the other blue decks.
I can't disagree with you there. That is fair.
And, I like playing with Mana Drain.
I would love for them to set up Vintage such that we could play with Mana Drain again. I actually agree with your goals. It's just I don't know if WotC is supposed to be quite that heavy-handed. Certainly, I don't think they're supposed to be that heavy-handed aggressively, like 3 months after Lodestone. Oh, let's shake it up again. Or has it been 6 months? I lose track.
Do you think it would be shaking it up, or do you think we've seen a steady stream of, decks that are either Workshop decks, Bazaar decks, Thorn decks, or Gush decks?
I think that Vintage has been moving enough that it's correct strategy for WotC to sit back and just watch it until it settles down. I don't think they're supposed to do anything. Sure, Thorns came in as a reaction to the Gush decks. That's fine, but that was interesting. Like I rode that wave for a while, and I wish I'd actually managed to win a VSL match with that deck. What are you going to do? I think that as long as people are still trying to say, okay, fine, Gush is the target, you got to give the metagame time to try to react to that target and see if they can. Okay, here come the Thorn of Amethyst Eldrazi decks. Here come this angle. Let's come from this angle. In my heart of hearts, I think they're going to have to restrict something blue in the next year. I just would have been shocked if they had done it this week, and I think it would have been wrong to do it this week. That's where I'm at.
I think in some ways the Chalice of the Void restriction and the Lodestone Golem restriction were a response to the metagame adjusting to Gush.
I think it's way more complicated than that, but fair enough. It's an interesting debate. Look, to be continued, right? To be continued probably 2.5 months from now or whatever. But realistically, to be continued at Eternal Weekend.
I'm with you that they should not restrict anything right before Eternal Weekend. That would just be too much chaos right before this big tournament. And, there'll be enough new cards to play with between now and then that'll be change enough.
Totally agree. All right, to be continued after Eternal Weekend then. Well, let's talk about VSL, because this is week 8. Now, just a scheduling note, make sure everybody knows what's going on. There's no VSL next week, and there's no VSL the week after. We're taking 2 weeks off, basically because of Pro Tour Sydney. The producer will already be on a flight to Australia. I'll be busy, playing some board games. So no VSL for the next 2 weeks. We will be back 2 days after Pro Tour Sydney ends due to the miracle of time zones and the international date line. It should all work. We'll have the last week of the regular season right after the Pro Tour. This is week 8, though. We should look at the schedule because it is crowded at the top. You, Rich Shea, are 5-2, and that's the best record in the field. Only you and Shuhei have managed to get to 5-2, and then look at all the 4-3s. Brian Kelly, Paul.
It's so crowded that I'm not even guaranteed to be in the playoffs.
No, it would be real. So I was looking at scenarios, and 5-4 is probably going to make the playoffs. In order for 5-4 to miss the cut, there's like 7 matches that have to go exactly one way. So it's like 2 to the 7th chance of 5-4 missing the playoffs. 1 and 2 to the 7th. Including like right away, if Brian Kelly loses this first match, then he can't get to 6-3. It will no longer be possible for 4 players to get to 6-3. I mean, obviously that's because one of Eric and Luis has to lose their big showdown that we've got queued up for later in the show. And there's a lot of ways you can clinch playoffs tonight. I gotta think though, even a security expert like you can't really just be trying to sneak into the playoffs, right? You gotta want the buys.
Oh, up until last week, my thought was, all right, if I win, I avoid relegation. And going into this week, the only math that I did out was it's not deterministic that I get in. So maybe I'm looking at the worst case scenarios. Maybe that's the.
Yeah, I mean, you are, and I get it. But so the way our playoffs works, the top 4 make the playoffs, and the 1 seed gets a bye all the way into the finals. The 2 seed gets a bye into the semifinals. Our quarterfinal is the 3 seed playing against the 4 seed. And if there's a tie, if there's more than 4 people tied for playoff spots, we just play more Magic. Now, the form of that tiebreaker.
Well, so the tiebreaker for last place used to be playing it off, but now whoever's tied for last place is getting thrown into the play-ins for the next season. Last season we had half the VSL in the play-in. So Randy phased out. He'll phase in during the next Untap step, I think. Don't worry about that. He went to Ferry's Isle or somewhere like that. So as you can see here, we're going to have Kai and Brian Kelly. And they're going to be playing what is awfully close to a Gush mirror match. Brian Kelly has powerful cards like Gutter Snipe in his deck. But Brian Kelly finds ways to take these interesting cards like Gutter Snipe and I don't remember her name, the Merfolk, who draws you a card if you play a bunch of spells. Brian's got all of those, why wouldn't he? Against Kai's more standard streamlined deck. Break from the blue and watch Randy being a necromancer, taking on David Ochoa being an artificer. And in this cosplay adventure, we'll see who wins. But, zombies against robots, who hasn't downloaded that fun app? And then you'll get to see me playing Grixis Pyromancer against Paul Rietzel on Delver. It's an interesting matchup because Paul's deck is trying to deal small increments of damage to me, and my deck is also trying to deal damage to me in small increments. So it'll be his lightning bolts taking on my mental missteps, and the only thing they can agree on is that I should have a lower life total. So I'm not thrilled about this match. I think it could be it could be tough. Delver is quite a Magic card. Then we'll have LSV playing Red, White, and Blue Mentor against Efro playing Red, White, and Blue Mentor. They're basically playing. Watching a blue vintage Gush mirror is actually pretty exciting, and I think that's going to be a really good match. And finally, we have the third non-Gush deck, Shuhei Nakamura. As far as I can tell, he owns 80 cards on Magic the Gathering Online, an Oath deck, and enough cards to tinker with the sideboard a little bit. And he'll be taking on Steve Menendian's Pyro Grow deck. It's got slightly more of a combo bent than a lot of the other Gush decks that we'll be seeing. but it's a deck that Steve's played before. He's done well with it before. It's similar to what he played at some large tournaments, and so I'm looking forward to that. But one of the things that Shuhei Nakamura has shown us is that consistency can get you good places in life. Shuhei's 5'2", doesn't switch decks, played the same deck straight through the Asian Vintage Championship, through the play-in, through all 3 seasons. So, Oath of Druids, it's a powerful card, and it can do a lot of damage. So our first match is going to be, it should be a good one. So for those of you who don't know Brian Kelly, he's the reigning and possibly last Vintage World Champion. He actually invented the Kelly Oath deck that Shuhei Nakamura is playing and has been playing and loves to keep playing. And he's really an innovator. He's not exactly one to play orthodox decks. He is something of an iconoclast, and that's brought him a lot of success. So let's take a look at this contraption. 1 Cabal Therapy, 1 Deep Analysis, 1 Demonic Tutor. Then we get to 4 Gataxian Probes, so you're reminded that we're not actually playing Highlander. 3 Preordains, 1 Dak Faden, 1 Jace the Mind Sculptor, full Boat of Moxen, and a Lotus. He has a Smash to Smithereens, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not entirely sure what that's doing. I guess it lets you, in Magical Christmas Land, kill a Mox and a Jace at the same time. One of Brian Kelly's signatures is the old triplex Force of Will, or Force of Torok as he likes to call it, because you essentially let your opponent get a 2-for-1 on you. Hey, we've gone to our untap step, and it looks like Randy is phasing in. Welcome back.
Hello. Sorry about that. My internet just plain vanished.
Hey,
modem rebooted itself, and I'm back.
Good, good. Now you can tell everyone about Gutter Snipe and Jory N. Ruin Diver.
Yeah.
Well, or maybe not. Okay, it looks like Jory N. got Randy. You there, Randy?
I think I'm here.
All right. All right, well, I think I'm here too, and according to Descartes, that's all you get in life.
So, it's all you can be certain of, that's for sure.
Exactly. So, Brian Kelly has 3 Containment Priests, 3 Tormod's Crypts, and 2 Swords in his sideboard, and then we go back into the world of Highlander, where he has a Disenchant, an Ingature, a Pyroblast, a Tundra, and the main theme of this deck, as we saw last week, is that he's just drawing lots and lots of cards while having some ways to leverage those cards. And it's a tried and true strategy. It's something you might find with Monastery Mentor. It's just that Brian has found other cards to leverage his card draw, such as, Gutter Snipe.
Gutter Snipe.
I think I've drafted it before.
I don't even like that draft. I pass it in cube all the time. It makes sense, though. I mean, the whole point of the blue cantrip decks is just how many spells can you play? What can you trigger off of them? How are you going to extract value from playing a bunch of cantrips?
Yeah.
Fair enough. You probably talked about this while I was gone, but I mean, the metagame of 7 Gush decks, an 8th blue deck in Shuhei, and then we actually have the only 2 non-blue decks paired against each other this week. We get the Dredge versus Workshop showdown. And, I mean, it sounds weird to say that there's 4 blue mirrors, but at the same time, I love it. I'm looking forward to it. I wouldn't want it all the time, but we haven't had the blue-on-blue mirrors all that much this season on VSL. I'm really looking forward to watching these guys fight.
Yeah, we'll have a lot of them now. And our first match should be a doozy. It should be a great one.
Yeah, definitely. You have a particular pick for match number 1?
Gosh, last Vintage Champion taking on the German Juggernaut. I mean, how do you not
need a
vote
rooting
for the
interest? I can give you a rooting interest. If Kai wins, you clinch the playoffs.
Okay, all right. Well,
if Kai wins, then it will no longer be possible to get 4 players to 6 and 3, and all the 5 and 4s clinch. Anybody with 5 wins clinches at least a tie, right? Clinches a postseason berth, even if it might wind up being a playoff to get to the playoffs.
Okay, so I can root for the German juggernaut then. Nothing wrong with that.
You could at least feel good about it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, both of these guys have added a lot to the VSL. Both of them have tremendous commentary. True. It's you know, it's hard to root against either of them, really.
I don't know. There's nobody in the VSL I want to root against. Possible exception of Steve right now for the next 2 weeks, but I'm not actually rooting against him. I'm just rooting for myself to be not last. Here's Kai's deck. Jeskai Mentor. Pretty straightforward version of the archetype. This is pretty much the version that has been running around Magic Online. I'm not even sure there's one version running around Magic Online. This is the version Luis plays on Magic Online. And Luis has a lot of success when he plays Vintage on Magic Online. So it has become kind of the Jeskai way. I mean, it's an open question, though, whether Jeskai is actually the right color combination. I mean, you can make the case for Grixis as a Pyromancer build for the blue cantrip deck. You can make the case for Esper. Ultimately, that coming down to how much you like the black cards in your blue cantrip deck. I'm a big fan of Cabal Therapy, but Luis and Kai following him would rather be on this build.
I love Cabal Therapy. I mean, I'm playing Grixis because of Cabal Therapy. So the red, white, and blue build is a build that we saw for a long time. It's sort of the obvious, straightforward mentor deck. And Princess Power won one of the Magic the Gathering online Power 9 challenges with it.
Yeah, good point.
Then we saw an eruption of decks that beat this. In particular, Sylvan Mentor beats red, white, and blue. But then the Eldrazi arrived, and Eldrazi do really awful things to the forest. So Sylvan Mentor has essentially gotten pushed out of the metagame by Eldrazi, leaving red, white, and blue Mentor to roam around free with their natural predator gone. And
the Eldrazi decks are also a lot of the reason why you see people liking the white mana. 4 Swords to Plowshares in the main deck here. You know, Lightning Bolt is just no longer the end-all be-all removal spell you want in Vintage. Sudden Shock doesn't really get it done either. White is the color with the best removal. There's even Path to Exile in the sideboard here, and that's pretty typical. That is one of the compelling reasons to put white into your blue deck in Vintage right now is all the sideboard cards and the creature removal spells.
Oh yeah, I think so. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Containment Priest.
Fair.
She does so much in this deck.
Not against the Eldrazi, but yeah, it is a better answer.
Not against the Eldrazi Menace, but
it's a better answer to both Oath and Dredge than anything you can get without white mana.
Right. It's way better than Grafdigger's Cage. So Grafdigger's Cage shuts off your own tiny Jaces. It shuts off your own Snapcaster Mages. If you're playing Cabal Therapy, it makes those not work. The Priestess, she's okay with Jace. She's okay with Cabal Therapy. Doesn't like Oath, hates zombies. Stops those things from happening. So she's an astronomically huge upgrade to Grafdigger's Cage. You'll note, of course, that Kai's on both.
Yeah, that's the other thing you get with Jeskai is you get to play both Mentors and Pyromancers.
Yeah, so Kai has 6 token makers in his deck, which... Yeah, there are some reasons to do that, of course. The deck flows a lot better when you have a token maker compared to when you don't. They're huge in the mirror match. They're a big trump there. And there are some cards like Dread of Night that stop the Mentor from making his friends. But if you're playing Snapcaster Mage, Young Pyromancer, you can still get all of your elemental friends.
Makes sense to me. I think I like Kai in this matchup. Feels like Brian he's kind of playing around. You know what I mean? His cards are more fun, but a lot of the guy, with playoffs on the line, as we, week 7, 8, 9, I feel like he's run up against a pretty well-tuned deck here, and I think that might be the edge in the matchup.
So I think Brian is that drunken master that you see in a Kung Fu movie. It looks like he's just buffooning around until he's absolutely clobbered somebody. So he shows up to Vintage World Championships with 3 Force of Wills and a Dragon Lord Dromoka in his deck, and then he wins. So,
that's a great point. All right, well, enough talking about it. Let's get down. If self-proclaimed drunken master Brian Kelly can pull this off, or if the German Juggernaut is going to win. Here we go.